The worst decisions often look like kindness in the moment. At 6:32 on a rainy Tuesday morning, Sarah Bennett was already running late. The single mother hurried through downtown Chicago with a paper coffee cup in one hand and her phone pressed against her ear. Her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, had woken up with a stomachache, and the unexpected delay had destroyed the carefully planned schedule Sarah followed every day. For years, her life had operated like a balancing act. One missed step could send everything crashing down. Rent was due next week. The electric bill sat unopened on the kitchen counter. Lily needed new sneakers. And Sarah's paycheck from the retail store barely stretched far enough to cover any of it. "Mom, I feel better now," Lily had insisted before school. Sarah smiled at the memory as she hurried toward the train station. Her daughter always tried to make things easier, even when she was struggling herself. The thought warmed her heart for a moment. Then her phone buzzed again. It was a text from her manager, Monica Hayes. The message was short. "Where are you?" Sarah checked the time and felt her stomach tighten. She was already 15 minutes behind schedule. Rain drizzled steadily across the city streets as commuters rushed past her. She picked up her pace. If she moved quickly enough, maybe she could still save the day. Then she heard the sound. A sharp crash followed by startled voices. Several yards ahead, near a crosswalk, a man had collapsed beside the sidewalk. People slowed down. Some looked. Most kept walking. Sarah instinctively moved toward the crowd. The man appeared to be in his early 40s. His expensive dark coat was soaked from the rain. One of his hands was scraped from the fall, and he seemed disoriented. "Sir?" Sarah knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" The man tried to answer but winced. His face was pale. A briefcase rested on the wet pavement nearby. Several pedestrians glanced over before continuing on their way. Sarah looked at her watch. Every second mattered. Another text message arrived from Monica. This time it read, "You better have a good excuse." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She knew exactly what helping this stranger might cost her. But she also knew she could not walk away. "Can someone help me?" she called out. Eventually a young man stopped and assisted her. Together they helped the injured stranger sit upright beneath a nearby awning. Sarah handed him her unopened coffee. "Drink a little," she said gently. The stranger looked at her with surprise. "You are going to be late because of me." Sarah laughed softly despite her stress. That ship already sailed. Minutes passed as she contacted a nearby urgent care clinic and arranged transportation. Rain continued falling. Monica sent another message. Then another. Sarah ignored them. Right now, a stranger needed help more than her manager needed an explanation. As the vehicle finally arrived, the injured man looked up at her. "Thank you," he said quietly. Sarah smiled. "Take care of yourself." She watched the vehicle disappear into traffic before glancing at the time. Her heart sank. She was over 40 minutes late. And somehow, deep down, she already knew this day was about to change her life forever. Sarah arrived at the store soaked from the rain and nearly out of breath. The automatic doors slid open, and the familiar smell of fresh coffee and cleaning supplies greeted her. Normally, she liked that smell. Today it felt like a warning. Employees moved between aisles preparing for the morning rush while customers pushed carts beneath bright fluorescent lights. Several coworkers glanced toward her and immediately looked away. They had already noticed how late she was. Sarah checked the time one last time and felt her stomach drop. 43 minutes. She had never been this late before. Not once in 3 years. She hurried toward the employee area, hoping she could explain everything before Monica Hayes decided to make an example of her. Unfortunately, Monica was already waiting. The store manager stood near the service desk with her arms crossed and a tablet in her hand. Her expression was cold enough to stop Sarah in her tracks. "Nice of you to finally join us," Monica said loudly. Several nearby employees instantly became interested in organizing shelves that did not need organizing. Sarah took a deep breath. I can explain. Monica raised a hand. Save it. There was a man who got hurt near the train station. Nobody was helping him. And? Monica asked. I stayed until transportation arrived for him. Monica stared at her as though she had just admitted something ridiculous. You chose a stranger over your job? Sarah felt every eye in the area shift toward her. I chose to help someone who needed help. Monica laughed without humor. You know what I hear? I hear another excuse. Sarah fought the urge to argue. She needed this job. More than Monica could possibly understand. Please, she said quietly. It was an emergency. Monica looked at the schedule on her tablet. Do you know how many times I have told this team that punctuality matters? Nobody answered. The silence became uncomfortable. Sarah glanced toward the floor. This is the first time I have ever been late like this. Monica nodded. And it will be the last. The words hit harder than Sarah expected. She looked up. What does that mean? Monica's expression never changed. It means you are done here. For a moment Sarah thought she had misunderstood. What? You are terminated effective immediately. The store suddenly felt very quiet. Sarah stared at Monica in disbelief. You are firing me? Actions have consequences. For helping an injured person? Monica shrugged. For failing to show up when you were scheduled. Sarah's chest tightened. Rent. Utilities. Groceries. Lily. Every responsibility flashed through her mind at once. Please reconsider. Monica shook her head. Decision made. Sarah looked around the room. No one spoke. No one intervened. Most simply looked uncomfortable. She understood why. They were afraid. The same fear she felt now. Slowly, she removed her employee badge and placed it on the counter. Her hands trembled despite her efforts to remain composed. Monica immediately turned away and continued issuing instructions as though nothing important had happened. As Sarah walked toward the exit, humiliation mixed with fear. Outside, rain continued falling across the city. She stood beneath the awning for several seconds, staring at the traffic moving through the streets. Earlier that morning, she had saved a stranger's day. Now she had lost the only thing standing between her family and financial disaster. And she had absolutely no idea how she was going to tell Lily. The train ride home felt longer than usual. Sarah sat near the window watching rain streak across the glass while commuters stared at their phones and hurried through another ordinary day. For them, Tuesday was just another date on the calendar. For her, it felt like the day everything had fallen apart. She opened her banking application twice during the ride and quickly closed it both times. The numbers had not magically improved. Rent was still due. Bills were still waiting. The future was still uncertain. By the time she reached her apartment building, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The small brick complex looked exactly as it had that morning. Children played beneath covered walkways. Neighbors carried groceries upstairs. Life continued moving forward whether people were ready or not. Sarah climbed the stairs and paused outside her door. For a moment she considered pretending nothing had happened. Just for one evening. Just long enough to give herself time to think. Then she opened the door. Mom. Lily's voice immediately filled the apartment. The 8-year-old raced across the living room and wrapped her arms around Sarah's waist. You are home early. Sarah forced a smile. Looks like it. Lily stepped back and studied her face. Children often noticed things adults missed. Did something happen? Sarah set down her purse and gently brushed a strand of hair away from Lily's forehead. How was school? Lily narrowed her eyes suspiciously. You are changing the subject. Despite everything, Sarah laughed softly. Maybe a little. Together they moved into the kitchen. The apartment was small but warm. Family photographs decorated the walls. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. A collection of unpaid bills sat neatly stacked beside a fruit bowl. Sarah glanced at them and quickly looked away. As Lily worked on homework at the table, Sarah prepared dinner using whatever ingredients remained in the pantry. Pasta. Tomato sauce. Nothing fancy. Yet somehow Lily treated every meal like a celebration. Halfway through dinner, the question finally arrived. Are we okay? Sarah looked up. What do you mean? You look worried. Lily twirled pasta around her fork. You only get that look when money is involved. The honesty nearly broke Sarah's heart. No child should have become that familiar with financial stress. She reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. We are going to be okay. Lily searched her face. Did you lose your job? Sarah blinked. For a moment she could not speak. Then she nodded. Slowly. Carefully. Lily stared at the table. Because you were helping somebody? Sarah froze. How did you know that? Because you would never be late for any other reason. Tears threatened to form, but Sarah fought them back. Instead, she smiled. Lily returned the smile immediately. Then you did the right thing. The words came so simply. So confidently. As though there had never been another choice. Sarah felt something shift inside her. The fear remained. The uncertainty remained. But shame disappeared. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, Sarah sat alone by the apartment window. City lights shimmered in the darkness beyond the glass. Her phone remained silent. No job offers. No solutions. No miracles. Yet as she remembered the injured stranger she had helped that morning, she realized something important. She had lost a job. She had not lost herself. And somehow, without knowing it, that decision was already beginning to change someone else's life too. The next morning began very differently for the man Sarah had helped. Ethan Walker sat inside a private recovery suite overlooking the Chicago skyline while a physician reviewed the results of his examination. The incident near the train station had turned out to be less serious than it first appeared, but the exhaustion that caused it concerned everyone around him. For years, Ethan had lived according to a schedule that left little room for rest. Meetings, acquisitions, travel, investors, reports. His calendar often looked more crowded than most people could imagine. Yet despite the pressure, one unexpected thought continued interrupting his morning. The woman from the rain. He remembered her tired eyes, the concern in her voice, and the fact that she had stayed long after most people would have walked away. You should take a few days off, his physician advised. Ethan barely heard him. Instead, he looked toward the chair where his wet coat had been placed the day before. Something inside one of the pockets caught his attention. A small folded piece of paper had been discovered during intake. Ethan opened it carefully. It was a child's drawing. A simple picture of a smiling woman holding hands with a little girl beneath a bright yellow sun. Written across the top in uneven handwriting were the words, "Best mom ever." Ethan stared at the drawing for several seconds. The paper was slightly wrinkled from the rain. He realized it must have fallen from Sarah's pocket while she was helping him. For reasons he could not fully explain, he slipped the drawing into his briefcase instead of throwing it away. Later that afternoon, while reviewing emails, he found himself thinking about her again. Thousands of people crossed Chicago streets every day. Most never noticed one another. Yet somehow a stranger had chosen compassion over convenience. That choice bothered him in the best possible way. Finally he called his executive assistant. I need a favor. Of course, she replied. There was a woman who helped me yesterday morning near the train station. A brief silence followed. You want us to find her? Ethan glanced toward the drawing. Yes. Do you know her name? No. Her employer? No. Anything at all? Ethan smiled slightly. She carried a paper coffee cup she never drank. She was in a hurry. And she stopped anyway. His assistant laughed softly. That may be the most difficult search request you have ever given me. I am serious. Then I will see what I can do. After the call ended, Ethan returned to work. Yet throughout the afternoon his attention wandered. Meanwhile, across the city, Sarah spent the day submitting applications and updating her resume while trying not to panic. Every rejection felt personal. Every unanswered email increased her anxiety. By evening she had applied for 7 positions and received exactly 0 responses. Still, she refused to give up. As she tucked Lily into bed that night, her daughter handed her the bookmark she always carried in her favorite novel. For luck, Lily said. Sarah smiled and kissed her forehead. Neither of them realized that somewhere else in the city, a billionaire was searching for the woman who had changed the direction of his week with a single act of kindness. 3 days passed, and Sarah's situation became more difficult with every sunrise. The savings account she had spent years carefully protecting was shrinking faster than she wanted to admit. Each time she paid for groceries or filled her car with gas, she felt a quiet knot tighten inside her chest. Still, she refused to let Lily see how worried she truly was. Every morning she smiled. Every evening she reassured her daughter that things would work out. And every night, after Lily went to sleep, she sat at the kitchen table sending resumes into what felt like an endless void. Meanwhile, Ethan Walker's search was beginning to produce answers. His assistant entered his office carrying a slim folder late Friday afternoon. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago while sunlight reflected across the glass towers below. Ethan looked up from a financial report. "Tell me you found her." His assistant smiled. "I believe we did." Ethan set the report aside immediately. "Go on." "Her name is Sarah Bennett. 32 years old. Single mother. 1 daughter, age 8. Ethan listened carefully. "And?" "She worked for one of the retail stores owned by our parent company until 3 days ago." Ethan frowned. "Until?" His assistant hesitated. "She was terminated the same morning she helped you." Silence filled the office. Ethan slowly leaned back in his chair. "Why?" "According to employee records, she arrived late for her shift." Ethan already knew the answer before hearing it. "Because she stopped to help someone." His assistant nodded. Ethan stared out the window. The city suddenly looked different. Thousands of people worked for his organization across dozens of locations. He often spoke about company values during meetings. Integrity. Compassion. Respect. Yet a woman had lost her livelihood because she demonstrated every one of those principles. "Who made the decision?" he asked quietly. "Store manager Monica Hayes." Ethan folded his hands together. "Keep looking." His assistant looked confused. "There is more?" "I want to know everything." Later that evening Ethan reviewed the file personally. Sarah's performance evaluations were excellent. Attendance records were nearly flawless. Customer feedback consistently praised her professionalism. One report even described her as the employee most likely to stay after hours helping elderly customers find transportation. The more Ethan read, the more puzzled he became. None of it matched the decision that had been made. Across town, Sarah attended a school event for Lily. Parents filled the elementary school auditorium while children displayed art projects along colorful walls. Sarah applauded as Lily proudly presented a small science project she had spent weeks creating. For a little while, financial worries disappeared. She was simply a mother watching her daughter shine. Ethan's investigators happened to arrive near the end of the event. They remained discreet. No photographs. No interruptions. No conversations. Their assignment was simple. Observe. Understand. Report. What they witnessed surprised them. Despite her circumstances, Sarah volunteered to help clean up after the event. She stayed behind to stack chairs. She encouraged nervous children. She thanked exhausted teachers. She treated everyone with the same kindness she had shown a stranger in the rain. The next morning a detailed report landed on Ethan's desk. He finished reading it and sat quietly for several moments. Then he glanced toward the folded drawing that still rested inside his briefcase. For the first time in years, a business decision suddenly felt deeply personal. And without realizing it, Sarah Bennett was about to receive an opportunity she never saw coming. Monday morning arrived with no warning and very little hope. Sarah sat at the kitchen table reviewing job listings while Lily finished breakfast before school. The apartment felt quieter than usual. Bills remained stacked beside the fruit bowl. The calendar on the refrigerator seemed to move faster every day. Sarah had applied for more than 20 positions in the past week. Most never replied. A few sent polite rejection emails. The rest simply disappeared into silence. She was trying to stay positive for Lily, but maintaining that optimism was becoming harder. Then her phone rang. Sarah almost ignored it because she did not recognize the number. At the last second, she answered. "Hello?" A professional voice greeted her. "Good morning, Ms. Bennett. My name is Rachel Foster. I am calling from Walker Industries." Sarah sat up straighter. "Walker Industries?" "Yes. We would like to invite you to interview for a position at our corporate headquarters tomorrow morning." Sarah blinked. Surely there had been some mistake. "I do not remember applying there. Your qualifications were brought to our attention through an internal review process." Sarah looked around the small kitchen as if someone might explain what was happening. "May I ask what position this is for?" Rachel smiled through the phone. Sarah could hear it in her voice. "Customer Experience Coordinator. Full benefits. Full-time salary. Growth opportunities." Sarah nearly dropped the phone. The salary alone was significantly higher than what she had earned before. "Why me?" she asked honestly. "We believe your background may be an excellent fit." After the call ended, Sarah remained frozen for several seconds. Then Lily appeared beside her. "Mom?" Sarah slowly looked up. "I think I just got an interview." Lily's eyes widened. "The good kind?" Sarah laughed for the first time in days. "Maybe the very good kind." The following morning, she arrived at Walker Industries headquarters nearly 30 minutes early. The building towered above the city like something from another world. Glass walls reflected the morning sun while employees moved confidently through the elegant lobby. Sarah suddenly felt underdressed despite carefully choosing her best outfit. She tightened her grip on her portfolio and reminded herself to breathe. Upstairs, Ethan Walker watched security footage from his office. He saw Sarah enter the lobby and immediately recognized her. The same determined eyes. The same quiet dignity. The same woman who had knelt beside a stranger in the rain without asking for anything in return. His assistant entered. "She is here." Ethan nodded. "Good. Are you going to tell her?" Ethan glanced toward the folded drawing still resting inside his desk drawer. "Not yet." Downstairs, Sarah was escorted toward a conference room overlooking the skyline. She expected a standard interview. She expected questions about experience, customer service, and previous employment. She did not expect the door to open and reveal the very man she had helped on that rainy morning. For a moment neither spoke. Sarah stared in disbelief. Ethan rose from his chair slowly, a small smile appearing on his face. "Good morning, Ms. Bennett." Her heart nearly stopped. Suddenly every unanswered question from the past week began connecting together. And she realized this interview was unlike anything she had imagined. Sarah stood frozen near the conference room doorway while her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The injured stranger from the rainy morning was standing directly in front of her, wearing an impeccably tailored suit and carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to leadership. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Ethan Walker extended a hand. Thank you for coming. Sarah slowly shook it. I think I have more questions than answers right now. Ethan smiled. That is understandable. The conference room overlooked downtown Chicago from nearly 50 floors above the city. Sunlight poured through the massive windows, creating an atmosphere that felt both impressive and intimidating. Sarah sat across from him, still trying to understand how a chance encounter on a rainy sidewalk had somehow led her here. Ethan noticed her uncertainty. Please relax. This is not a test. Sarah laughed softly. It feels like one. Ethan nodded. Fair enough. He reached into a folder and removed a piece of paper. Immediately Sarah recognized it. Lily's drawing. The same one she thought had been lost during the storm. Her eyes widened. You found it. Ethan carefully placed it on the table. It was in my coat pocket after you helped me. Sarah picked it up gently. Lily drew this for me. I assumed so. A brief silence followed. Then Ethan leaned back slightly. You never asked who I was. Sarah looked surprised. Should I have? Ethan smiled again. Most people would have. Most people were not worried about losing their jobs. The answer lingered between them. Ethan's expression grew more serious. I know what happened. Sarah lowered her eyes. Then you know it was not exactly a great week. I know you were terminated because you stopped to help someone. I did not expect anyone to investigate. Ethan folded his hands together. I did. Sarah looked at him carefully. There was something familiar about his calm manner, but she still did not understand the full picture. Finally she asked the question. Who exactly are you? Ethan glanced toward the skyline before answering. I am Ethan Walker. Sarah waited. The name sounded familiar. Then realization suddenly appeared across her face. Walker Industries. The building. The invitation. The executives she had passed in the hallway. Everything clicked together at once. You own this company. Ethan nodded. I do. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. You are the chief executive officer. Yes. She laughed once, mostly from shock. The man I helped was a billionaire? Technically. Sarah leaned back in her chair and covered her face for a moment. This cannot be real. Ethan allowed her a moment to process everything. He remembered how calmly she had handled a crisis while everyone else walked away. Now the roles were reversed. Eventually Sarah lowered her hands. Why am I here? Ethan's answer came immediately. Because I wanted to meet the person who chose compassion when there was nothing to gain from it. Sarah remained silent. Ethan continued. I have reviewed your employment history, your evaluations, and the circumstances surrounding your dismissal. Her expression became cautious. And I believe a company should reward integrity, not punish it. For the first time since losing her job, Sarah felt something she had not experienced in days. Hope. She still had no idea what would happen next. But as she sat across from the billionaire whose life she had unknowingly changed, she sensed that the story she thought was ending had only just begun. Sarah left Walker Industries that afternoon carrying something she had not possessed in weeks. Possibility. The meeting had lasted nearly 2 hours, yet it felt much shorter. Ethan had not offered her charity. That surprised her most. Instead, he had asked thoughtful questions about customer service, leadership, problem solving, and the challenges employees faced on the front lines of retail operations. For the first time in a long while, someone seemed interested in what she knew rather than what she lacked. As she rode the elevator toward the lobby, she replayed the conversation again and again. The billionaire she had imagined would be distant and intimidating had turned out to be remarkably attentive. He listened more than he spoke. And somehow that made an even stronger impression. Meanwhile, high above the city, Ethan stood near his office window watching the afternoon traffic flow through downtown Chicago. His assistant entered carrying a folder. How did it go? She asked. Ethan looked toward the conference room where Sarah had been sitting earlier. Better than expected. You like her? Ethan smiled slightly. Professionally, she is exactly the kind of person our company needs. His assistant laughed. That was a very careful answer. Ethan chose not to respond. Instead, he opened the folder containing additional reports from several company locations. Yet despite the stack of business matters waiting for his attention, he found himself thinking about Sarah's determination. Most people facing her circumstances would have become bitter. She had become stronger. Later that evening, Sarah returned home carrying takeout pizza as a small celebration. Lily met her at the door with immediate excitement. How did it go? Sarah set the pizza on the kitchen counter. I think it went well. I think that means yes. Sarah laughed. Maybe. They sat together at the small table while Sarah carefully explained what had happened. She told Lily about the giant building, the interview, and finally the truth about the stranger from the rainy morning. Lily listened with wide eyes. Wait. The man you helped owns the company? Sarah nodded. Apparently. That sounds like a movie. Trust me. It feels like one too. The next morning, an email arrived shortly after 9 o'clock. Sarah almost spilled her coffee opening it. The message came directly from Walker Industries Human Resources. Her hands trembled as she read the first sentence. She had been offered the position. Full salary. Full benefits. Flexible scheduling options to accommodate her responsibilities as a parent. For several moments she simply stared at the screen. Then tears filled her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Relief. Pure relief. When she arrived at headquarters the following week for orientation, she quickly realized Ethan had not handed her success. The role carried real responsibilities. Multiple departments depended on customer experience reports. Senior executives expected results. The learning curve would be steep. Yet Sarah welcomed the challenge. On her first day, Ethan briefly stopped by her office. How is the new position treating you? He asked. Sarah smiled. Honestly? Terrifying. Ethan laughed. That usually means you are growing. As he walked away, Sarah looked around the office and took a deep breath. She had entered the building as a struggling single mother searching for a second chance. Now she stood at the beginning of an entirely new chapter. Neither she nor Ethan realized that much bigger revelations were still waiting ahead. And somewhere inside the company, Monica Hayes remained completely unaware that the consequences of her decision were rapidly approaching. The first month passed faster than Sarah expected. Every day brought new challenges, new responsibilities, and new opportunities to prove herself. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, she adapted. She listened carefully during meetings. She studied company procedures after hours. She asked thoughtful questions and took detailed notes. Most importantly, she never forgot what it felt like to stand on the other side of the corporate structure. Employees quickly noticed the difference. When Sarah reviewed customer feedback reports, she paid attention to details others often ignored. When frontline workers raised concerns, she listened. When managers explained operational difficulties, she searched for solutions instead of assigning blame. Her reputation spread quietly through the organization. People began requesting her involvement in projects because they trusted her judgment. One afternoon, Ethan attended a quarterly strategy meeting involving several department leaders. As the discussion progressed, executives debated declining customer satisfaction scores in certain regions. Charts appeared on large screens. Numbers filled spreadsheets. Recommendations were exchanged. Yet none of the proposed solutions addressed the actual problem. Finally, Ethan looked toward Sarah. What do you think? The room became silent. Sarah hesitated briefly before speaking. I think we are measuring the wrong thing. Several executives exchanged surprised glances. Ethan leaned forward. Explain. Sarah stood and approached the presentation screen. Everyone here is focused on customer complaints. But complaints are symptoms. We should be studying employee experiences. She pointed toward several data points. Customers notice when employees feel unsupported. They notice when managers create fear instead of trust. They notice when people stop caring because nobody cares about them. The room remained silent. This time for a different reason. Sarah continued. A company cannot deliver respect externally if respect does not exist internally. Ethan smiled slightly. It was exactly the kind of perspective he had hoped she would bring. After the meeting ended, several executives approached Sarah to continue the discussion. Her ideas eventually became part of a pilot program designed to improve employee retention and customer satisfaction simultaneously. The results exceeded expectations within weeks. Meanwhile, Ethan had begun reviewing broader reports concerning leadership practices throughout the company. Certain patterns kept appearing. Employee turnover rates. Formal complaints. Exit interviews. One location repeatedly appeared in those reports. The same store where Sarah had once worked. Ethan requested additional documentation. What he discovered troubled him. Multiple employees described a culture of fear. Several reported inconsistent disciplinary actions. Others mentioned favoritism and intimidation. Monica Hayes's name appeared again and again. Yet despite the complaints, previous investigations had gone nowhere. Ethan instructed the compliance department to conduct a comprehensive review. Across town, Monica remained unaware. She continued managing the store exactly as before, convinced that the firing had been forgotten. Meanwhile, Sarah focused entirely on her work. She had no interest in revenge. She wanted to succeed. She wanted stability for Lily. She wanted to build a future instead of reliving the past. One evening, as she prepared to leave the office, Ethan stopped beside her desk. "You handled yourself well today." Sarah smiled. "I was terrified. Nobody noticed. That is because I have years of experience pretending everything is fine." Ethan laughed. Then his expression softened. "For what it is worth, your perspective is changing this company." Sarah looked surprised. "I am just doing my job." "No," Ethan replied quietly. "You are doing much more than that." As she watched him walk away, Sarah felt a growing sense of confidence. Neither of them realized that events already in motion would soon bring the past crashing directly into the present. The compliance investigation began quietly. No announcements were made. No warnings were issued. Ethan wanted facts before conclusions. Over several weeks, auditors reviewed personnel records, employee evaluations, complaint histories, scheduling reports, and management decisions from multiple locations. Most stores showed normal patterns. One did not. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer the picture became. The problem was not a single mistake. It was a culture that had been allowed to develop under poor leadership. Reports revealed employees who had been disciplined inconsistently. Requests for schedule accommodations had been denied without explanation. Complaints about management behavior had been dismissed rather than examined. More troubling still, several former employees described situations remarkably similar to Sarah's experience. Good workers had been punished for circumstances that reasonable leaders would have handled differently. One afternoon Ethan sat in a conference room reviewing the latest findings. His legal counsel, human resources director, and compliance chief joined him around the table. The atmosphere was serious. "How confident are we?" Ethan asked. The compliance director slid a report across the table. "Very." Ethan opened the document. Every page reinforced the same conclusion. Monica Hayes had repeatedly exercised authority without fairness, consistency, or accountability. While none of the actions individually appeared dramatic, together they painted a troubling picture. Ethan closed the report. "How was this missed?" Nobody answered immediately. Finally the human resources director spoke. Some complaints were categorized as isolated incidents. Ethan looked toward the skyline outside the window. They were not isolated. Across the city, Sarah remained focused on work. She had become one of the most respected members of her department. Her recommendations continued producing measurable improvements. Employee engagement scores were rising. Customer satisfaction metrics were improving. Senior leaders increasingly sought her perspective during planning discussions. Yet despite her success, she rarely discussed the store where everything had started. She preferred moving forward. One evening she stayed late preparing a presentation. Most employees had already gone home. As she organized notes, Ethan appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this." Sarah smiled. "You are becoming dangerously good at timing." He handed her a cup. "Long day?" "Productive day." Ethan sat across from her. For a few moments they discussed work, family, and Lily's latest school project. The conversation felt easy. Natural. Something both of them had begun noticing more often. Then Ethan became thoughtful. "Do you ever think about going back?" Sarah looked confused. "Back where?" "The store." She considered the question. "Not really." "Even after everything?" Sarah stirred her coffee. "Holding on to anger takes energy. I need that energy for Lily and my future." Ethan studied her expression. Once again she surprised him. Most people would have wanted revenge. Sarah wanted peace. "That is one of the reasons you are exceptional," he said quietly. Sarah laughed. "Or maybe I am just tired." They both smiled. Meanwhile, far from corporate headquarters, Monica received an unexpected email requesting her attendance at an upcoming regional leadership meeting. She thought little of it. Such meetings happened regularly. In fact, she felt optimistic. Store performance numbers looked acceptable. She expected routine discussions and strategic updates. What she did not know was that several executives would also be attending. Nor did she know that a specific case file had already been placed on the agenda. As Ethan watched the city lights appear beyond his office window later that night, he knew the investigation was finally complete. The facts were clear. The truth was documented. And very soon, everyone involved would have to face it. The regional leadership meeting took place on a bright Thursday morning inside one of Walker Industries' largest conference centers. Managers from multiple locations arrived carrying laptops, reports, and expectations of another routine corporate event. Monica Hayes entered confidently. She wore her best professional outfit and greeted colleagues with practiced enthusiasm. Nothing about the atmosphere suggested that this meeting would be any different from dozens she had attended before. The large conference room gradually filled with regional directors, human resources representatives, compliance officers, and senior executives. Conversations echoed softly across the room while presentation screens displayed company logos and quarterly performance metrics. Monica settled into her seat feeling completely at ease. Then Ethan Walker walked onto the stage. The room immediately became silent. Ethan rarely attended regional meetings personally. His presence alone signaled that something important was about to happen. After opening remarks and business updates, Ethan shifted the discussion toward company culture. The tone of the room changed instantly. "Every organization faces challenges," he began. "But the true measure of leadership is not how we perform when everything goes well. It is how we treat people when circumstances become difficult." Several managers nodded. Ethan continued. "Over the past several months, we conducted a comprehensive review of employee relations across multiple locations." Monica felt a slight sense of unease. "Nothing serious. Just curiosity." Then the first case study appeared on the screen behind him. No names. No locations. Only facts. An employee with an exceptional performance record. A single mother. Nearly perfect attendance. Positive customer feedback. Years of dedicated service. Monica's confidence began to fade. Ethan calmly walked through the timeline. An emergency. An act of compassion. A delayed arrival. Immediate termination. The room grew increasingly quiet. Several executives exchanged concerned glances. Human resources personnel reviewed documents in front of them. Ethan then revealed additional findings from the investigation. Patterns of inconsistent leadership. Employee complaints. Retention concerns. Failures in management judgment. One by one, the facts formed a complete picture. Finally, Ethan looked directly into the audience. Leadership is not authority. His voice remained calm but firm. Leadership is responsibility. Monica felt her pulse quicken. For the first time, she understood exactly where the discussion was heading. Then Ethan did something nobody expected. He invited Sarah Bennett into the room. A side door opened. Sarah entered quietly and took a seat near the front. Immediately, several people recognized her from company communications and internal presentations. Monica stared in disbelief. Ethan allowed a brief moment for everyone to process what was happening. Then he shared the final piece of the story. The injured stranger who had been helped that morning was him. Audible surprise spread throughout the room. Managers exchanged shocked looks. Some executives sat back in their chairs. Others smiled knowingly as the entire situation suddenly made sense. Ethan continued. This employee was punished for demonstrating exactly the values our company claims to represent. No anger appeared in his voice. Only disappointment. That should never happen. The room remained silent. Every person present understood the significance of the moment. This was no longer about one employee or one manager. It was about the kind of company they wanted to become. Ethan then announced immediate leadership changes, corrective actions, and expanded accountability measures. The decision was professional, transparent, and fully supported by documented findings. As the meeting concluded, many managers approached Sarah personally. They thanked her. Some apologized for failures within the system. Others simply expressed admiration. Meanwhile, Ethan watched from across the room. Public justice had finally arrived. And for the first time since that rainy morning, the truth belonged to everyone. The weeks that followed transformed Sarah's life in ways she never expected. The public acknowledgement during the leadership meeting created conversations throughout Walker Industries. Employees discussed integrity. Managers reconsidered their leadership styles. Training programs were updated. New policies emphasized judgment, compassion, and accountability. What had started as one person's decision on a rainy sidewalk gradually became a catalyst for broader change. Yet despite the attention surrounding the story, Sarah remained focused on her work. She had never wanted recognition. She had simply wanted fairness. One Friday afternoon, she received unexpected news. The employee engagement initiative she helped design had produced some of the strongest results in company history. Customer satisfaction scores had increased significantly. Employee retention rates had improved. Several regional directors requested expansion of the program nationwide. Sarah sat quietly reading the report, almost unable to believe it. Months earlier she had been wondering how to pay rent. Now executives across the company were implementing ideas she helped create. Later that day Ethan invited her to lunch. They chose a small restaurant several blocks from headquarters where neither would attract much attention. The conversation began with work but gradually shifted toward family, goals, and life experiences. Sarah spoke proudly about Lily's academic achievements. Ethan listened carefully, genuinely interested. Then Sarah asked a question she had never asked before. Do you ever get tired? Ethan laughed. Constantly. You always seem so composed. That is because people only see certain parts of my day. Sarah smiled. Fair point. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. Over the past several months, friendship had developed naturally between them. Neither had forced it. Neither had expected it. Yet it continued growing through mutual respect and shared values. That evening Ethan received an invitation from Lily herself. Sarah arrived home to discover her daughter carefully creating a colorful card at the kitchen table. "What is that?" Sarah asked. Lily grinned. "An invitation." "For who?" "Mr. Ethan." Sarah laughed immediately. "You invited the chief executive officer to your school science fair?" Lily nodded proudly. "He likes learning and helping people. That makes him qualified." A week later, to Sarah's complete surprise, Ethan accepted. The science fair took place in the elementary school gymnasium beneath colorful banners and student artwork. Parents filled the room. Teachers circulated between displays. Children enthusiastically explained projects involving plants, weather, engineering, and chemistry. Ethan spent nearly 2 hours there. He listened attentively to every presentation. He asked thoughtful questions. He encouraged nervous students. By the end of the event, several teachers assumed he worked in education. Watching him interact with Lily revealed a side of him Sarah had never seen before. Genuine warmth. Patience. Kindness. As the evening ended, they stood together near the parking lot while parents loaded projects into cars. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said. Ethan looked toward Lily laughing with friends nearby. "I would not have missed it." Sarah smiled softly. The city lights shimmered in the distance while a gentle evening breeze moved through the trees. For the first time, neither of them felt like a billionaire executive and an employee. They felt like two people whose lives had unexpectedly intersected because of one simple choice. And as they watched Lily wave enthusiastically from across the parking lot, both quietly realized that something important was growing between them, built not on status or wealth, but on trust, respect, and the belief that kindness still mattered. Months later, Sarah sometimes found herself thinking about how quickly life could change. The same woman who once sat at her kitchen table worrying about unpaid bills now helped shape decisions that affected thousands of employees across the country. Yet the success she valued most had nothing to do with promotions, salaries, or recognition. It was the simple fact that Lily smiled more often. The constant anxiety that had once hovered over their small apartment had finally disappeared. One autumn afternoon, Walker Industries hosted a company-wide leadership event celebrating the success of its culture transformation initiatives. Employees from different regions gathered in Chicago. Stories were shared. Achievements were recognized. New goals were announced. As part of the event, Ethan invited Sarah to speak about the importance of empathy in leadership. Standing on stage, she looked across the audience and remembered the frightened woman who had lost her job months earlier. "People remember how you make them feel," she said. "Long after policies are forgotten and reports are filed, people remember whether they were treated with dignity." The audience applauded. Ethan watched from the front row, proud not only of what Sarah had accomplished, but of who she remained despite her success. After the event ended, employees gradually departed. The conference center grew quiet. Evening sunlight painted the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and orange. Ethan found Sarah standing near a window overlooking the city. "You were incredible today," he said. Sarah smiled. "I was nervous." "You hide it well." They laughed together. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt familiar now. Comfortable. Honest. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and removed a folded piece of paper. Sarah immediately recognized it. Lily's drawing. The same drawing that had connected their lives on that rainy morning. "You still have it?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "I keep it with me." Sarah looked at the worn edges of the paper and felt emotion rise unexpectedly. Ethan glanced toward the city below. "That morning changed more than you realize." Sarah studied him carefully. "It changed my life too." Ethan smiled. "I know." Another quiet moment passed before he continued. I spent years believing success was measured by numbers, growth charts, and business results. He looked back at her. Then someone stopped in the rain to help a stranger when she had every reason to keep walking. Sarah felt tears threaten to form. Ethan's voice remained steady. You reminded me what matters. Across the city, Lily waited at home with a surprise she had been planning for weeks. When Sarah and Ethan arrived at the apartment building later that evening, they discovered colorful decorations hanging inside the living room. A handmade banner stretched across one wall. In large letters it read, "Thank you for helping people." Lily stood proudly beneath it. "This is for both of you," she announced. Sarah laughed through happy tears. Ethan smiled warmly. They spent the evening eating pizza, sharing stories, and enjoying the kind of simple happiness that money could never buy. As the night came to an end, Sarah looked around the room. Her daughter was happy. Her future was secure. Her work had purpose. And beside her stood a man whose life had become intertwined with hers through nothing more than kindness. The rainstorm that once seemed like the worst day of her life had quietly become the beginning of everything better. And in that moment, surrounded by warmth, gratitude, and the people who mattered most, Sarah finally understood a truth she would carry forever: compassion never guarantees an immediate reward, but it always changes the world, starting with the people who choose it.